we're likely going to put in a peak here in July. End of sell-off. I got people telling me, no, this time's different. Herd is really bullish right now. But again, look at the NAAIM exposure index. Again, now starting to turn back down after reaching another extreme. Telling us we're likely witnessing a top. All these other extremes back over here, and I've marked them, marked tops. This is probably not the top. We'll probably end up setting up a divergence later on, or maybe reach a new extreme. But again, we are likely topping and going to get a sell-off. He told me today the stock market is unstoppable. Again, I expect a rug pull is going to happen. Got this negative divergence, multiple point negative divergence between the S&P and stocks above their 20-day moving average. It may not be done yet. As I said, we may go a little higher. We are going higher in the S&P. So again, we don't have to go higher here on stocks above their 20-day moving average, but it may become a little bit better defined there. S&P moving to a new high, stocks above their 20-day moving average. We're getting a little triple divergence here in the more recent price action, and this much larger divergence has developed. So again, we're likely going to see a top and a sell-off. Possible we see the Dow could do all-time high. It's within striking distance of it. That's why I'm saying the S&P still may not be done. It could. We're just right below the previous high. And again, get a Dow theory sell signal where the Dow moves to a new high and the transports does not. Don't have to get that. Just get a pullback, then a major reversal. Ends up being a wave 4, but something to pay attention to with the Dow and the transports. Divergences between the two often mark tops and bottoms. Please support the channel. Please support the channel with the link directly below that allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. Take a moment to partner with me. I would really, really appreciate that. And I just ask that you help out rather than get sponsors and sell you a bunch of stuff you don't need. Follow the link below to take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want. Get a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. Take a moment to help out. I would really, really appreciate it. These signals have been absolutely incredible. We're about to get another top here and a pullback. If you find that information helpful, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. I told you we had that close back below the upper Bollinger Band. We did it over here, and then we pushed back above the upper band. Here, again, we could see the top at the upper Bollinger Band without exceeding it again. Oftentimes, that is the way it works out. We go to a new high, but then you tag that upper band or just under it. Now it's at 63.40. So again, wouldn't be surprised to see the S&P get a close above 6,300, top out somewhere in the very low 6,300 area in the next day or two or three or whatever. Maybe sooner than later if our divergences are completing on these intraday charts and the daily chart here. We have this divergence on the RSI. We've got the triple divergence down here on the MACD. Nvidia is going to get the 13 count, as you'll see in this video. A major trend line of resistance. We're directly underneath it, right at that level, a whisker way there on Nvidia. Moved above 62.84, our previous high from the 3rd July. I think you're going to see a peak here, and then I think you're going to begin to turn, and we'll be watching for a drop back below the 10 period, back below the momentum cloud. When you do that, you're probably going to move back towards the 200 and back towards the trending cloud, and you'll see these divergences begin to play out, and I think that's likely going to be here any day now. Possible NASDAQ is diverging with S&P, and maybe it's peaked. Again, they can both go higher together. But again, watching this, we have the histogram here. I think it's going to tick back up and form a little divergence like the RSI here in the more recent price action. And again, the money flow, it's got another divergence. So this last one, first divergence, and again, now you're forming this multiple point divergence. Stochastics turn back up with this push to a new high. So again, I think you're going to get this little tiny divergence on the stochastic as well. Maybe on into Monday, Friday or Monday here. So we'll see what happens. I thought we'd go make a new high. Thought we would go Monday's gap. All that's happened. I predicted from the bottom has happened, and I believe that we're going to top soon. Now, not yet called a top on the NASDAQ. I told you to start watching for one as the 9 count was under construction in the weekly time frame. That 9 count could mark a top, or we could exceed it. Go make the new highs. We did make the new highs. I was predicting a rally to this trend line right here. We've overthrown that trend line. We've become very, very overbought. Two scenarios for the S&P 500. One is saying that we're about to wrap up primary wave one. We'll get wave two. This is an extended 5-wave push higher. Now my alternative count, I think it's less likely. The reasons why is what I'm seeing with Nvidia trend line, the long-term trend line, which I'm talking about in this video. It says we're going to correct, we're going to get a higher low and then resume and get a massive, massive rally. It would mean we go all the way up to this upper channel line here in the monthly time frame. I think that's looking less likely. I use this channel line right here to call the 2022 top. More likely we're going to pull back and go higher, form larger divergences in the daily time frame, in the weekly time frame, and here in the monthly time frame, I think you'll get this massive divergence here, probably on into August or September, getting it on the RSI as well. So I think we'll reach, at least come closer to the weekly trend line rather than the monthly long-term channel. I talked about that at great length in detail last weekend. Based on the yield curve, inverting again based on the Nvidia chart, I'm starting to think this count is more likely. This is now my primary count. I think we're wrapping up the wave three with this divergence. Probably see the RSI turn down, and you probably see large divergence develop, much like what we had over here in December and February, something like that, where you get this really, really large divergence end up, and we may even see one in the more recent price action. Is what we got between January and February there, but it ended up being a massive divergence. We could see something like that develop here. But I think that this count is more likely that we're finishing primary wave three. We're going to get primary wave four. Maybe it's not this deep, maybe it is. But I'm looking at that 200 period. I'll be looking at Fibonacci retracements once we peak. And I think we're going to get one more push higher. And I think this could take us up to, 65, 66, 6,700. I think we're going to peak here around 6,300. I don't think it's unreasonable to think we reach the trend line in the weekly time frame, maybe near 66 or 6,700. Stochastic turned back up, but you still have this massive divergence. MACD's got this triple negative divergence. And the money flow, we've got it on the oscillator developing. Some green bars back on the oscillator, likely forming this divergence a little bit higher. If I was wrong about going to highs, I put a question mark there, but I told you I thought we'd exceed that level. I was correct. This is what I think is likely happening. If this is correct, we could rally and see a peak in August or September maybe. Markets start to crash if this scenario plays out. If this wave count is correct, Nvidia peak, stock market start to crash after this count completes. I think that's when the Fed is going to panic. If that is correct and we peak sometime in August, September, or October, we could see the Fed do jumbo cuts before the year ends. Inflation starts ticking back up, as I think it's going to, then it's going to be cautious and second guess themselves and likely not to cut. Well, the S&P was up. The NASDAQ was down 35 points today, 0.16%. The NASDAQ again, it's likely got this rising wedge. Again, maybe it's peaked in the S&P. It diverges with the S&P at this little triple divergence. And again, in the most recent price action, the larger triple divergence going back from these previous peaks over here of our rising wedge pattern here. Again, I think where you've got wave three, you're going to get wave four, and then you're going to get wave five. This is what I think is likely going to be the case. This is this alternative count. I am now making this my primary count. It's more likely with what I'm seeing with Nvidia. If you want to know what I'm talking about with Nvidia, the monthly channel on the S&P in the monthly time frame channel nearly 100 years old. This count is more likely. On NASDAQ, again, we've got this divergence here that's about to complete. Same thing on Nvidia. Nvidia is possibly going to get a 13 count tomorrow. If you want to see the Nvidia charts and see what's going on, long-term charts with Nvidia and shorter term, watch to the end of the video because I'm going to be covering it at the end of the video. Watching to see if I get a topping signal here for the S&P 500. So far, I don't have one. Again, there's no guarantee that I will get one. Sometimes they don't show up. Did mark the bottom. We got it early over here. Did not show up at the February peak. I'll be watching to see if we get one or not. If we do, I'll let you know. There's a NASDAQ, same thing. Don't have a signal yet. Did get it at the bottom. Got it early at the top over here before the peak. The December top. Don't know if it's going to show up. It may not show up at the February top. Was present at the bottom. I'll be watching this carefully. This is the NASDAQ 100. thing for the Dow. I don't have a signal yet. It still may show up. Did a nice job of calling the bottom. Nice call there on the tops. If we get another signal or not. And the Russell, here is the IWM ETF. Again, no peak yet. And we have one show up right after, but again, a little higher there on the Russell. Watching to see, do I get these signals? There's no peak at the February peak, but it did mark the tops back in November when the ended up diverging with the S&P 500. It made a lower high in February, while the S&P made a higher high along with the NASDAQ. No guarantee. Listen carefully. There's no guarantee the signal will mark the top, but it very well could. I programmed it. Tell me when momentum could possibly change, but it doesn't always catch every single price fluctuation. Sometimes the turns mark major bottoms or major tops. We'll see if we get one here. Once again, there's no guarantee the signal shows up. It very well could. Okay, we got the new highs on NASDAQ previously, as I predicted. Now the S&P joining it. I predicted that we would have new highs back at the bottom. That's now happening. Dow up 192 points, up 0.43%. The S&P up 17.27. We made a new all-time high, closed right back below the previous high, 62.84, I believe. We've now filled the gap, and again, I've been predicting since the bottom, since I called the day of the bottom, and recent days here, predicting that for a triple divergence on the S&P 60-minute chart. That's now happening. NASDAQ up 19 points. The Russell was up 0.5%. The VIX was down 1%. I told you I was watching this gap fill area. I told you at 62.79. I told you that gap over here from Monday's gap lower. I told you I thought that was going to get filled and we were going to go make new highs. Well, that's what's happening. I think we're going to top, sell off, but I do think a higher low. Up again, you have the bears internet. They're calling on social media sites. They're calling for top pattern, that this is it, it's over. Same people that told us the rally was never going to happen. These are the same people that told us we were going to crash when I called the day of the bottom. I think we get a pullback. I think we get a short-term top, and then I think we go higher. But then I think we will top in the coming weeks or months ahead. Wouldn't be surprised to see a top in the stock market before the summer ends or on into the early fall. The S&P 5-minute chart right here that we're looking at, we moved just above that previous peak from July 3rd, the day before Independence Day. We moved just above it, and then we're pulling back here. I think you can still go just a little bit higher. We have the CPI data coming on Tuesday. It's going to turn up higher. We saw the headline number bottom out and begin to turn up last month, as I predicted would happen. The core CPI held steady. I've got that right here. The blue line right here is the headline number. It bottomed out at 2.3%. It turned back up with our last report to 2.4%. We held steady there at 2.8% with the core CPI. There's people saying inflation's not going to go back up. Oh, true inflation's down. The Fed's going to cut. Here we go. Of that in the crypto markets, especially in the crypto markets, and we'll likely see inflation tick back up. That's often what happens right before a recession. Historically, that's what's happened with the last several recessions that we've had. Again, it's likely going to be blamed on the tariffs. Going to get this next week. Again, maybe that's the catalyst. It's earnings season. The market gets a reality check on Trump's tariffs. At this point, herd is going, Trump's bluffing about the tariffs. Trump's a taco. He always chickens out. And that's what the narrative on social media is right now. And again, negotiations are going to come to a conclusion in the not too distant future. And these countries are going to come to the negotiating table and make a fair deal. They're going to get stuck with a tariff rate. It's going to happen. Actually, I'm talking about inflation right now. I think the inflation data will begin to turn up. I think we'll eventually see Jamie Dimon's crack in the bond market. I think you'll see bonds collapse and you'll see yields rise. As I think there'll be an inflation freak out. And that's what I think will likely mark the top in the coming weeks or months ahead. Could this be the catalyst by starting to tick back up? We get a reality check The herd starts running around with their hair on fire going, oh, the tariffs! They're causing inflation! And the Fed can't cut. The narrative will be the Fed can't cut. Tariffs are causing. The S&P gets one more push higher here to get an actual close above this previous high from July 3rd. It's our abbreviated session before Independence Day. Remember on the 15-minute chart, I was talking about the S&P 500 forming this divergence with this peak over here and going to a new high. Remember that? Well, that's now happening. So again, is this now done, or we go just a little bit higher? Again, my guess is that you're probably going to see a divergence right here in the 15-minute time frame, probably tomorrow. But I do think the S&P 500 is peaking. NASDAQ may have already done so. If it's possible, it could join the S&P. Like I said, sometimes they diverge, sometimes they don't. We look at these 60-minute charts, and here's the NASDAQ. Again, I told you I thought we were going to push up here. I think we're getting this 5-leg push higher. Maybe it's done. Maybe it's quite not done, but I think you're getting this triple divergence, and it very well could be done. It's a little bit higher. It's not. I think S&P still will do it. I'll have to see, do they diverge or not? We're going to take out the cloud. I think we're going to take out the 50-period moving average, and I think you're going to see a sell-off. The sell-off, we're being told, no way it's going to happen. Just like down when I called the bottom. No way we're going to get the rally back up. I'm warning that we're going to form a top and get a pullback. The very same people, the herd, celebrating new highs. Celebrating Nvidia. Oh, it's got a $4 trillion market cap. Nothing's taking this market cap. These people get so emotional. They get super bullish at tops and super bearish at bottoms. At the same people that were telling us it was over at the bottom. We're telling us, Kramer and the Bears telling us, oh, we're gonna have this Black Monday crash, and the Bears are saying, no, it's even gonna be worse than what Kramer's saying. The market is just gonna collapse because of the tariffs, and I told you the market was gonna bottom with the tariffs, week of the tariffs, and it bottomed the head of the tariffs on the 7th, and that has now been proven correct. We're at major support. Explained all this at the bottom. These same people in the herd said, yeah, that's got to be right. That's got to be right. The people that told us there's no way we're going to rally back up when I was calling the bottom and predicting new highs, said there's no way we can rally up, are now the people telling us there's no way we're going to go down. And again, I've been posting social media little things about the herd, telling you that a top is coming, being shouted down as usual. Not yet called a top. I've warned one is coming because of the 9 counts in the weekly time frame. If you follow along, you know what I'm talking about. We just got the other 9 counts. Daily charts. We're likely going to overthrow those levels and then peak, which is now what is happening. And I've been looking for these triple divergences to form here in the 60-minute time frames, which is now happening. Everything I've warned you about has now happened. Very people told us this was never going to happen. And the very people that were depressed, upset, and had lost all hope down here, now they're euphoric, celebrating, and they're doing the Snoopy dance. People telling me on my posts, shut up, and we've had a breakout. This is exactly what happened over here. It's a breakout! And it was a fake out, and we went the other direction. And now we've had breakout to new highs, and again, herd is celebrating. They weren't celebrating when I called a bottom and we had the break of the downward trend and the bears were still, oh, it's a bear market rally, and I told you, people that are telling us that we're going to have a bear market rally, they're telling us we have a bear market rally. They're the people who are telling us the rally was never going to happen to begin with. It's absolutely insane. It really is. Nevertheless, again, you want to do everything the opposite of what the herd does. And again, the herd eventually, when we got above the 200 period, which was this gap right here, they started getting back to bullish. Now they're uber bullish here. And as we were rallying off of the lows, they were believing the bears, telling us this is nothing more than a bear market rally and that we were going to crash. They're very gullible people, the herd. Majority of people that make up the retail investors. Again, a good chunk of them have never ever seen a bear market. When we get the next bear market, it's going to take them, which I do not believe started back over here, by the way. It's going to take them by surprise. But the people shouting me down, I don't know what I am talking about, that we're going to get a top and we're going to get a pullback. I still think we're going to new highs. I'm still longer-term bullish. I just think that we're going to get a top and a pullback. Warning that it's coming. Not yet called a top. We've been talking about the different warning signs, sequence counts, predicting this rally, and now we're getting it. Here I have my other Elliott wave count, and again, I'm moving now towards this being my primary count, and the other extended fifth 5 waves higher as my alternative count. Either one of the counts are possible. I just think this might be more likely. I talked about earlier in the week. Both counts are possible, and I still think, but both counts are saying we're going to go make new highs once this pullback is done. I'm just starting to think that this count is more likely based on some of the things I'm seeing. Count, we had primary wave 1, primary wave 2. We're getting primary wave 3 right here, moving to the new highs that I predicted. Remember, I'm looking for the divergence to complete here, and I told you it might end up being that we get a divergence in this most recent price action and get a triple divergence. That's now here. There it is. I could be done with just popping above this high. Could go a little bit higher again towards that low 6,300 area and top out, which is probably more likely. The S&P closed at 6280. Its high was 6284. Rally can continue Friday or Monday. Again, you could see a peak and complete this triple divergence. If it's done right here and now, then we'd have to start a sell-off. But again, we got a good shot that it's going to finish in the next couple of days here. The rally that I predicted and the triple divergence that I've been predicting probably going to wrap up, hasn't already, probably going to wrap up on Friday or Monday ahead of the CPI data. We're moving here into earnings season. Could be a factor. Trump's tariffs factor, especially with the CPI data. If it starts ticking back up, narrative's going to be, oh, the tariffs are causing inflation, and selling off in their herd will get the rug pulled, and then they'll be scratching their heads trying to figure out what happened, as they always do. Telling us right now there's no way we're going down are the same people that told us there's no way we're going down in February and there's no way we're going up in April. Clearly see the divergences that are developing on the MACD and on the RSI. Be they're done, we buy an extra day or 2 or 3 on the day of the CPI on Tuesday, or likely ahead of it. We do in fact see these divergences play out. You got a good shot. You're going to see a peak here Monday if they are to complete here. Today, I think they more likely close above the previous high, July 3rd. I'm going to show you the futures chart, the E-mini futures of the S&P 500. I think we're still likely to push a little bit higher, close above July 3rd peak, above it on an intraday basis today. But I'll show you the awesome oscillator here. If the 4-hour chart right here on futures is almost equivalent to the 60-minute chart, because futures trades nearly around the clock, except for the weekends. It reopens on Sunday ahead of the market opening on Monday morning. Got this divergence going on right here. We had this divergence on the awesome oscillator and the MACD. We had the divergence up here. It ended up giving us this little sell-off with Trump's tariff letters. Then we've begun to recover back up, and now we're making a new high. And again, you're likely going to see this larger divergence develop. We had this divergence give us this little off, which I think is the wave 4 in our final 5th wave higher. This move, whether primary wave 3 or wrapping up primary wave 1, both of those scenarios, I think you're going to end up forming a larger divergence here. I think you're going to see this happen either Monday, Friday, or Monday. Maybe Friday we see this complete, possibly Monday, and I think you're going to complete these divergences. So this is why I still think we're going to go a little bit higher on the S&P. Now, NASDAQ may diverge with it. It's slamming up into my trend line that I've been talking about. I'm predicting these new highs in the market. We're now getting it, and I think this is about to come to a conclusion. We got the herd slapping each other on the back, and a lot of the influencers proclaiming themselves to be geniuses. Yet we're probably going to see there's so much hype right now. Again, we are likely forming a top and going to get a pullback. This is the kind of sentiment that you see when a top develops. But just wanted to show you the awesome oscillator and the MACD here on the 4-hour chart of the E-mini futures of the S&P 500. Now, just recently we completed the 9 count on the S&P and on the NASDAQ in those weekly time frames, and I told you can go a little higher and then began to turn. So we've gone a little higher. We completed this 13 and 9, and I told you I was watching for it. I was looking for this move to be pushing up to a new all-time high to complete the triple divergences in the daily time frame, to complete divergences on the hourly charts. 13.9, and I told you, times that plays out immediately, and it's showing price exhaustion. It plays out immediately, and you get an immediate turn, and it marks the top. Other times you go just a little bit higher. Then you turn. Now, again, we went a little bit higher, and then we turned here, but it was only a pullback. Over here, just a little pullback. The times the counts mark reversals. This is likely going to be a reversal for a bigger pullback. Probably see that over the next few weeks. We'll see this pullback, and then we'll get a higher low at a Fibonacci retracement or the 200 period moving average. Herd euphoric. The herd is euphoric right now. Don't believe a sell-off is possible. This is what happens at tops. Now, I believe this is a short-term top, but I believe it is a top. It's developing here, even though the bottom predicted this rally to new all-time highs. I think it's going to top. I'm telling you, the people that were very bearish when I called the bottom lost all hope and were expecting a crash. The same people dancing in the aisles right now, celebrating as Nvidia gets a $4 trillion market value. Just be aware of this. Don't lose sight of what's going on. This is telling us price is getting very, very tired. It's like your cell phone. When you don't charge it, go to use it, and it has just a little bit more power left in it, and you overthrow this area, but then it shortly dies on you. That's what this rally is. That 9 count in the weekly time frame, I told you we can turn immediately with that bar or go a little bit higher. I told you I thought we'd go a little higher, new all-time highs, and then I told you I thought we'd turn. That's what's happening. Again, the 9 count is telling us that we're getting price exhaustion. It was a 9 count that marked the bottom. The 8 bar was a reversal bar. Same thing going on with the NASDAQ. This is QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 QQQ ETF. You got your 9 count. You've gone a little bit higher. Just over 4 weeks ago, I told you to be watching for these 9 counts. I told you we'll get the 9 count on NASDAQ first. Here, I told you that with bar 8. I told you if we don't get a lower high scenario, because I was predicting new highs, I told you if I'm wrong, we'll get lower highs. If I was right, we're going to see this 9 count play out here, be followed by the S&P 9 count, go make new highs, climb into the trend lines. Well, we've overthrown the trend lines that I was predicting from these previous highs. We've overthrown those levels. I think you're going to get the pullback, and I think you're going to resume the advance, but I think we're going to put in a short-term top here. 9 count, the NASDAQ 100, QQQ here, overthrowing it a little bit, and then turn. It's, again, showing price exhaustion. NASDAQ on Monday, NASDAQ 100 got that 9 count. We've overthrown it a little bit. Today, the S&P moved to a new high. Yesterday, the NASDAQ did. Yesterday, NASDAQ did not make a new high. This is giving us a 9-13-9 reversal pattern. So again, got to be watching this. But like I said with the S&P, warned you, we could overthrow this 9 count just a little bit and then begin a turn. Got to pull back to these 200 period moving averages. Maybe a Fibonacci retracement. Here's a QQQ daily chart presenting the NASDAQ 100. Just like NASDAQ 100, we got that 9 count at the same time as NASDAQ 100. And again, we've gone higher for Nvidia, but I've been talking about going up and slamming into that trend line. Well, that's what we're doing right now. Nvidia is topping. It's forming the triple negative divergence on the MACD, just like the NASDAQ. We're going to see it top. Again, you got the 9 count. We're overthrowing it. You've had these other 9 counts here. Well, you had the 9 count. You got this sell-off. You got the 9 count. You had this sell-off. And again, we're getting this 9 count is likely going to lead to a sell-off. It's possible NASDAQ goes and makes a new high, and Nvidia doesn't. And Nvidia ends up forming a broadening formation here. That's certainly possible, which is a 1, 2, 3, whoops, started that wrong, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 reversal. So that's possible, but I still think it's very, very possible that it joins the NASDAQ and makes a new high. But this is the trend line of resistance in the daily time frame, the trend line of resistance in the week or in the long term, I believe, monthly time frame. This 9 count, and maybe I'll show you that chart in just a second. The 9 count, I bet here we're about to get a 13 count. We get it tomorrow or Monday. Nvidia in the daily time frame is about to get a 13 count down sell signal. I've talked about this previously. We've now got up to bar 12. Again, 9 count here, the 9-9 signal. We went sideways, and now we're getting the trend extension and about to get bar 13. Maybe that comes Friday or Monday. Be above the bar from 2 bars ago in order to get it. These counts have marked interesting turning points here at the very top. Here at the very bottom, we had a 9-9 signal. 9, we went a little bit lower and got the counter trend. But Nvidia, again, is forming a massive triple negative divergences on a lot of indicators like the MACD. You're going to get a 13 count here, possible 13 count, as we're pushing right into trend line of resistance of 90-something% now. Possible 13 and also a possible another 9, which would give us a double sequence count sell signal. Guarantee they both play out. 3 more bars to complete the 9 count. Mean that it completes by Tuesday. There can be no interruptions. Every bar has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. The 13 count, 1 more bar that is above the bar from 2 bars ago, intraday high. We're watching this with great interest because we've come up to the trend line that I've talked about on Nvidia. We're just directly underneath that trend line that I've been talking about. We're up 91% since I called the bottom on Nvidia. Again, Nvidia helped me call the bottom for the NASDAQ. Also, major support, but we're forming this divergence. I have one here in the most recent price action on the RSI, which I warned you was likely going to sit up and reach that trend line, which we talked about. That has now happened. Nvidia is likely about to top, pull back. May have this broadening formation, and maybe that's it. If we have a 5-leg push here, that's certainly possible. But if this is a wave 3 like the S&P and NASDAQ, if we get an extended 5th wave, then you could come back up, you could come down, and then you can, towards the 200 here, the black line right there, and then you could come back up and go slightly higher and slam up into this area once again. And that's where our major long-term trend line is coming into play on Nvidia. Nvidia is going to top here. We're likely going to, or at least you got a good shot of it, see that 13 count play set up either Friday or Monday in all likelihood. I've shown you this chart before. This is the chart that allowed me to call some of the previous tops on of our recent tops here on Nvidia. We keep slamming into this trend line. I told you we might have a top on Nvidia previously. We were to see the stock market got those 200-week moving averages. We bounced off those 200-week moving averages at the April lows. Above them, that I called the bottom. April with the tariffs. Talked about this with Nvidia that, again, we could go slam right up into this trend line again and still make new highs. We could pull back on Nvidia. If we get like wave 4, primary wave 4, we complete primary wave 3, we get a wave 4, and then we go higher. A little hard to see here because this is the long-term weekly chart going back all the data that we have on Nvidia, this channel. Trend line from this high over here, our recent highs, parallel boundary to the lower boundary there, could mark an Nvidia top. Now, I talked about the extended 5th wave as well. That would take us beyond this level for Nvidia. This scenario is more likely. I'm changing my alternative count to my primary count, the NASDAQ and the S&P, because I think this scenario is probably more likely with Nvidia. So off, we get one more push to a new high into this trend line over the next several weeks from now, or maybe a couple of months. Bring it up close here, you can see, look at what I'm looking for. I'm looking for some kind of sell-off, and maybe it's a bigger sell-off, maybe not so big, but maybe it's a sell-off, and then we go up and we hit that trend line once again. If it plays out that way, we could see a peak in August or September or early October. You could still, the trend line I just showed you is on the daily chart. That's from right here that we're stalling at right now, but again, you could pull back off of that trend line and go above it and still hit this trend line, connecting the peak here and the previous peak. And you can still have a broadening formation for Nvidia, slamming right up into this long-term trend line. Why do I talk about Nvidia? Because the market follows Nvidia. The NASDAQ follows Nvidia. Possibility is that we see the Nvidia peak and NASDAQ go make a new high later and Nvidia diverge with it like we saw back in July. I think that this scenario is very, very likely going into that long-term trend line. Just wanted to show you that of why I'm thinking we may top the extended 5th wave if this scenario plays out here with Nvidia.